Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give folks a few minutes to get logged in. So just hang on with us and then we will get started very promptly. Okay, I think we're going to get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our education series event. This is our 5th of the year. We have one once a month. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. We are talking about how criminal justice reform is shaping the future. And if you are just learning what we're doing here at our education series events, we focus on different topics as they relate to homelessness and poverty and invite panelists from different areas of the state who have expertise, including our own at the coalition, to talk more about what we're doing. I'm not sure if I introduced myself. I'm Meredith Ritchie. I'm the Director of Communications here at the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. And again, thank you for joining us. I do want to show you who we did have planned and who we have planned right now, because life is ever changing and we're in the middle of legislative session. So there is a lot going on right now. And so then I'm sorry to report that Senator Lee and Denise Mays are both at the Capitol building as we speak, working on some of these very important issues that we are hoping to address tonight. So I will send some slides from Denise for you to have and ask questions if you have any questions with that. And we're very sorry to miss both of them, but appreciate both of them having interest in joining us. But we still have two wonderful panelists that I'm excited to introduce to you tonight. We have Diane Trematola Lawson, who is from Colorado Cure, and then Megan Linder, who is from Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. And I am going to pass the mic over to Diane, who will talk for a few minutes about what the work that she does and some interesting things about homelessness and people coming out of the criminal justice system. And then we'll have Megan speak. If you have questions throughout the evening, please post them into the chat and we will get to as many of them as we possibly can today, as well as those we might not have answers to that I can pass on to Denise or Senator Lee. Thank you very much. And I'm going to stop my screen and take it from there, Diane.
Thank you, Meredith, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. I hope I can provide some information or help for people that are trying to work with this poverty and the homelessness of people coming out of an incarceration period. I have been a Denver resident all 78 years, and I was a high school teacher in Denver schools for 31 years in the high schools. And that's how I got into this, because years ago when court-ordered busing happened in Denver, a lot of Hispanic and African-American students from the eastern part of Denver, from Five Points, Curtis Park, Swansea, Elyria, were bused into Kennedy High School overnight. And through them, unfortunately, some are dead now because of gang issues, and others had gone to prison through the juvenile justice system and then on to adult prison. So I decided I'd try to find some organization that would help people, families, friends, to navigate the system when loved one went to prison or jail. And I found CURE, Citizens United for Rehabilitation of Errants. We're all volunteers, nonprofit, criminal justice advocacy. And Charlie and Pauline Sullivan are the directors, based in Washington, D.C. And I put in the chat how to contact our website, coloradocure.org and nationalcure.org. So through those years, I first started the CURE chapter in Colorado in August 1990. And we've been growing ever since. And I have a really good board of people that help so much with different issues. Like there's one of my, as a former prisoner, is one of my board members who works mainly with people convicted of a sex offense and how to help them try to find housing, which is really, really tough. We're talking about, that's really about the hardest group to find housing for, as you probably know. So through that, board. I have a lot of good help, and I also work closely. I'm on the board of Remerge.com. Remerge.com, I put it in the chat, is a great organization. Well, it's nonprofit criminal justice advocacy to help people with resources when they come out of being incarcerated. So Carol Peoples is the director, and I put that in the chat. If you want to go to her website, there's so many icons on there with how to find resources, that whether you need bus tokens, whether you need child support information, housing, which is huge. And she said that is the most pressing need or resource that people are looking for. So this is a really timely issue. I want to especially mention that when people come out of prison in Colorado, if it's their first time on parole, they get $100. That doesn't go very far, as you can imagine. But if it's a second time or a third, whatever, on parole, they receive nothing. So that is a big problem. And we have been working, I know one of the bills that passed now says that before anyone leaves the Department of Corrections, they have to have an ID. And we've been working on this for some years, because especially prisoners who have been in a long time come out. One of my former students came out after 30 years in 2017, and they had worked inside to try to have all these documents lined up, birth certificate, social security card, all that. He got off the bus in Denver and he had nothing. And it took months for him to get any of those documents. So it's a start. Senator Coleman's bill on an ID is good, but there's other things like the Medicaid card, birth certificate, social security, there's a bunch of them that people need, and they don't have them. So that we're still working with that all the time. And another problem, I've been on the Denver Community Corrections Board as a citizen member for 20 years. And one of the big problems there, if you've been following this, is 5 community corrections facilities or halfway houses in Denver have closed. And now there are only 3 left. Independence Pecos, which is about 41st and Pecos in North Denver, and has about 75 clients, and it's males. And then Fox, which is about 38th and I-25, that's all males too. And then Dahlia, which is about 46th Avenue and Colorado Boulevard, and that's all males. So there's no facility for women now because Thule Hall closed. Denver has bought that building, but who knows when they'll have it refurbished, or because it was a male facility, or if it's going to be for homeless women and or women coming out of prison. We don't know yet for sure. So there's William Street was for women over by St. Joseph Hospital, but that closed way over a year or so ago. So one of the big problems is that people cannot they call me all the time or call Cure to try to find housing, especially the fact that a really big barrier now is Senate Bill 20-85. That bill says that unless you are, quote, progressing in treatment, sex offender, persons convicted of sex offense treatment inside prison, which is called SOTMP, unless you're in that program, you cannot go be paroled or go to community corrections, to a halfway house. So the wait list inside the Department of Corrections is 1,400 prisoners. So with the closing of some halfway houses and the long list for treatment, I think you're going to see a lot more people, unless I'm wrong, stay in prison for a lot longer time before they might be able to be paroled. And it's going to be especially tough on people convicted of a sexual offense. And through Cure, we try to work with all the people we can, like legislators, the wardens, the administrative staff of the Department of Corrections. And I'm on the Denver Sheriff Advisory Board. The sheriffs have been very helpful. And just like it's a constant battle all the time. And I just think that I don't have any easy answers, but I'm very concerned about the latest thing where City Council has approved having 5 unrelated people living in Denver in a home. But there is a group called Safe and Sound Denver, and they've gathered 18,000 signatures, which are going to be verified by the city, to bring this to a vote in November again, because they are opposed to increasing the number to 5 unrelated people in a house in Denver. And it's that NIMBY, not in my backyard syndrome. And if you've been following the Park Hill Methodist Church issue with people, trying to set up a living arrangement set up there, that some of them have to move over to Regis University campus. So I really don't, I never get pessimistic, but I see that the crunch is even greater. And I don't want to go on and on, but I welcome questions, but I did want to talk about those things. And mainly the poverty level is unbelievable, because in prison, the average wage, maybe if you're lucky enough to have a job, some kind of job, maybe 60 cents a day. So, and then you have to buy your canteen items, and if you want to buy stamps or whatever, envelopes, all this, phone time. Good luck if you don't have someone outside that probably can send in funds for you. And that's not a lot of people. So thank you for the time. And if there's any questions, or people have questions and didn't understand all that I was talking about, please feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. I certainly understand the challenges of like what happens when you aren't earning a wage but need to have expense money when you're living in prison, because you can't get most of the things without having to pay for them. And then what that looks like once you leave, because you're walking out with $100, which maybe gets you to where? Downtown Denver for one night stay. And then you have a lot of challenges that come after that to try to find employment and the barriers around that, which I'm sure, good segue, that Megan can talk a little bit about with the Colorado Coalition and the work that we do.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Diane, for highlighting the critical issue of housing for individuals with legal histories. I'm going to speak more about what we're doing here at the Coalition on that topic. I'm going to try and share my screen. I did put together just a brief PowerPoint. Okay, so hello again, everyone. My name is Megan Linder. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed addiction counselor. And I'm here tonight to provide some perspective as a service provider and discuss some of the approaches that we are using that have helped folks to stay out of the jail system and offer some calls to action. I have worked as a therapist in a variety of criminal justice settings, including jails, community corrections, and in the municipal court. And although Senator Lee is not here today, I did want to give a special shout out to him, as he was a prime sponsor in the continuation of the jail-based behavioral health services, where I was a therapist at Jefferson County Jail for a few years. And that was an innovative statewide program that used the cost savings from decriminalizing marijuana into jail-based treatment services. We also supported individuals to continue with treatment and to support their transition out of the jail. And currently, I'm a program manager at the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, specifically with the Social Impact Bond Program, which I'm going to speak more on. So one of the recent successes with criminal justice reform in Denver has been the Social Impact Bond Program. This is also known as the SIB. This launched in 2016, and this study focused on individuals experiencing chronic homelessness and those who are super users of jails, police services, and other emergency services. The primary goals of this study was to reduce jail bed days, which I will speak more on that in a little while, and on housing stability. So this study explored whether people could exit the homelessness jail cycle if provided with housing and the right supports. And just to kind of take note of the economic impact of the individuals that we're serving. So the coalition was randomized 250 individuals that met criteria of experiencing chronic homelessness and being super users of the system. And their data indicated that this subset of people cost approximately $7 million a year to the city of Denver for these emergency services. And when that's broken down per individual, that's $29,000 per person. The 250 people also resulted in 14,000 days in jail, 1,500 arrests. And then as far as health services goes, this was over 2,000 visits to detox facilities and 500 ER visits. Here is myself and some of my team members. We have 2 SIB teams at the coalition. So we're known as SIB Team 2, and we currently have 113 clients on our caseload. Again, the intervention that we are providing is what Diane is mentioning, the very much needed housing for this population with criminal histories, and we provide supportive services. And to speak on supportive services, what our team is an ACT team, and that stands for Assertive Community Treatment. We provide comprehensive services in a flexible delivery model. So we do not require clients to schedule appointments with us. We go to the clients themselves, and most of our services occur in their homes, or if they're going through housing transitions or haven't yet been housed, we go and locate them at their last known locations, or wherever we can find them in the community to engage with them. Our team of 10 includes case managers, therapists, psychiatry, nursing, and peer support specialists. And with our roles, we also have specializations. So I wanted to focus a little bit on one of the specializations we created on the team is our criminal justice system navigator, which is the tall gentleman with the hat on. That's Robert Johnson. He's one of our peer specialists and also serves as our criminal justice system navigator. So Robert has lived experience with justice involvement and substance use. And part of his role on our team is offering hope, legal education, and court advocacy for our clients. So he's been an integral piece of, as well as all of us do participate in the court advocacy process of going into the courtroom, advocating with judges, prosecutors, and public defenders to get folks out of jail early or divert jail entirely by advocating to support kind of just discussing the services that we offer and explaining that if any of our folks are out of their housing for 90 days or more, they're then at risk for losing their lifetime housing voucher, which is an incredibly big deal. And fortunately, we can attribute some of our success from this program due to our collaboration with criminal justice entities in Denver. And just through education and getting to know the folks that we're interacting with, parole officers, probation, the folks in the court system, they have been very supportive and helpful with our clients. And I should also note the building that is on this page is called the Renaissance Downtown Lofts. And this was a building created specifically for the Social Impact Bond program. This building houses 100 of our 250 clients, and the other individuals are housed at what's called our scattered site locations throughout the community. So it would just be any typical apartment building, could be our neighbors, wherever. as well as some of our other coalition properties that we have. And to talk a little bit more about the target population, those that were randomized into the study were individuals that had at least 8 arrests within a 3-year period, and they identified as being transient at the time of arrest. So transient meaning they did not have an address, or the address they provided was a homeless shelter. And outcomes. So this was a 5-year study, started in 2016. This study ended in December 2020. And I am counting down the days because July in 2 months is when the 5-year outcomes research data is being published for the public. And so I'm only speaking on the 2 to 3 year outcomes at this time. And at that marker, so for housing stability, which was one of the goals, 2.5 years into the SIB project, 85% of the participants remained in housing without ever exiting the program. And as far as jail days goes, during the first year in housing, 44% of participants did not return to jail. It's important to note that the Denver SIB project will be one of the largest, most robust evaluations of such programs across the country. And I wanted to just speak a little bit more on what we mean by jail bed days. That seems pretty self-explanatory, but to go a little bit more in depth on that, the real impact of reducing jail bed days means that we have less crime happening. We have less police resources needed for arrests or for community disturbances. We have less court cases, less money going into courts, police, emergency services. It's a significant amount of money to keep somebody in jail even for one night. And so that's a cost savings there. And most importantly, jail bed days, reducing that means greater quality of life factors for our clients. And that's what my team is here for. Also, it's important to note that there's a misconception on the SIB participants related to crime. And a commonality between the SIB participants is that their 8+ arrests in the prior several years before joining our program are oftentimes crimes that, if they were housed, wouldn't be a crime. For example, many of our folks have crimes such as drinking a beer, which many of us do in our living rooms, but it's a crime when you're not housed. Also crimes being urinating in public, another result of not having a bathroom to use, as well as criminal trespassing. So that could be sleeping in a tent as criminal trespassing or flying a sign to make money for survival. And I wanted to give a shout out to the gentleman on the screen. This is KP. He's one of our SIB participants. And I wanted you all to meet another one of our current clients. This is Matt. Matt entered our SIB program in 2017, and he was leased up on June 8th, 2018. Matt still remains in the same apartment where he was leased up at and has received 0 new crimes. But what I wanted to speak on about him is that when he joined our program, he joined us with 2 felony charges for possession. And the reason that he received these charges was initially for being a homeless individual and flying a sign on an on-ramp to a highway. And when he was approached by police, he did have drugs on him for his personal use. And he kind of speaks at length about his substance use was a means for coping and survival while trying to get through living on the streets. And he wouldn't have been targeted had he have not been homeless, but he needed a means to survive. And he recently went to court. It's taken him a long time just for fear for losing his housing. Once he got into housing, he's been absolutely terrified to re-enter the court system, to try and clear his name and complete his sentences. I actually, when I was still a therapist on the team before moving into program management, I met with him and a probation officer that worked at the coalition for some of our clients. And so she walked us through what would need to happen, and it did require jail days. And at this point, for him, going to court meant that he would lose his housing, despite kind of processing in ways that we would try to advocate for that not to happen. We certainly can't predict and don't have power and control over a judge's decision. But when he was finally willing to go to court this past month or April, the judge was able to see that Matt has remained stably housed since 2018, and Matt is also in recovery. He's using medication-assisted treatment options and has been successful with maintaining his sobriety. And so his current goals, when I spoke to him today to just kind of check in and see how he's doing, is he was issued 16 hours of community service to complete. So he's working on those opportunities that are actually much harder because of the pandemic happening right now, and then pursuing employment. Other goals, of course, to be keeping his apartment and maintaining his freedom. And the other piece I wanted to just speak on as far as empathy and compassion for this population is the ACE study. So many of you all might be aware of this study. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. This was conducted about 25 years ago by Kaiser and CDC. And it's one of the most robust studies of childhood adverse experiences and their long-term health outcomes. And I wanted to just focus on the incarcerated population. And so research shows that individuals who are incarcerated reported nearly 4 times as many adverse events in childhood than the general population. And this picture here just shows 3 types of the ACEs that are assessed on this 10-question screen. So the categories are abuse, so having experienced physical, emotional, or sexual abuse in childhood, as well as neglect, physical and emotional neglect, and household dysfunction. So having a relative who's incarcerated while you were growing up, having a relative or someone in the home experiencing a substance use disorder or mental illness, having a mother treated violently in your home, and divorce were some of those risk factors. The research also indicates that 8 out of 10 of the ACEs were found to be significantly higher for those in the criminal population. And so that just speaks to the role of trauma and their upbringings. And my last slide today is just on some calls to action. And so I just wanted to invite you all to be on the lookout for the July 2021 Denver SIB outcomes research, and to get some advocacy going of how we can expand this program, maybe even collaborating with parole or DOC to support transitions back into the community using permanent supportive housing as the option. And okay, so housing and then employment. So a lot of our folks want to have served their time, want to be pro-social members of the community, and have a hard time entering society because of barriers that we have systemically put in place, whether it's housing eligibility criteria of not having certain crimes on your record, or employment as well because of criminal record. One agency that's a good one to check out is called Defy Colorado, and that agency focuses on mentorship and employment journeys for folks transitioning from prison. The last one being, if you see something happening between police and a citizen, consider videotaping it. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Oops, I don't have my video. Thank you, Megan. Megan, I appreciate that very much. I was like, oh, is she going to talk about? And then you did. So that's wonderful. We have a few questions from the audience, and I'm really glad that you talked a bit about the ACE study as well as what criminalization of homelessness looks like. So I think that that's really an important topic that I think is kind of misconstrued a lot, that people often will say, well, so many people experiencing homelessness are in the criminal justice system, rather than looking at it as, why are there so many people experiencing homelessness in the criminal justice system? And that kind of attributes to some of the points you were making about crimes of homelessness, meaning if someone's urinating, if they're doing it in their own home, that's totally fine. But if you're doing it in public, that's illegal. And so there are a few questions specifically about that. So Diane and Megan, I'm happy for either of you to answer these. Do we know, when we're talking about people who are returning to the criminal justice system each year, how many of those people are becoming homeless versus how many of those individuals are returning to housed lives? And what's the disparity in that scenario?
I think that I put something in the chat there. Did you see that? Where the last figure I had was 80% coming back homeless, Meredith. But the people, like I've said, Nicole Lewis and the staff down at Division of Adult Parole, they would have the actual, updated numbers, okay, and they could tell you. And I think, Megan may have something to add to that.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think one of the ways that cycling in and out of the jail system and ways that it creates an unstable lifestyle is that a lot of folks miss their next rent payment. And so they lose their housing through eviction. Sometimes that happens while they're still currently incarcerated, even for a short jail stay, if the landlord perceives that they've ended their lease agreement or lack of rent. And so then when somebody gets out, the just rent payment, rent costs in the city of Denver is tremendous, and folks don't have the money in order to put down the deposit to then put down the first month's rent. And that's a frequent kind of situation leading to homelessness. The disruption of the low-level crimes and going into incarceration for those, rather than receiving a citation to come back to court. The issue of going to jail has been one of the problems. And as far as disparity of folks that re-enter with housing, as far as I'm aware, Diane, there's no kind of systems that are in place we have folks that are supporting folks to identify housing, but there's not a tremendous amount of money available to assist folks with first or second month's rent. And so it's a socioeconomical issue of, if you come from a family that could allow you to stay on their couch until you get until you get up and going. Many people don't have that opportunity. Similarly, based off of that ACE study, they have a lot of trauma and multi-generational trauma in their family. Many family members with incarceration histories too.
Right, I think John was asking, he didn't see anything I put in the chat. Can you all see it? Or John, did you, I put it.
I re-typed your answer over and sent it into the Q&A. So John, I think you should, and everyone should be able to see it there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I am seeing, let me get to my next question here. Diane, I think you wanted to answer this about SB 20-85. What is it trying to do, and what are some of the pros and cons of that, maybe?
I've really been beating this like a dead horse, but here's what it says. Unless you are progressing in treatment, whatever that, there's a program in DOC for people convicted of sex offense called Sex Offender Treatment Monitoring Program, SOTMP, okay? And the wait list to get that program is 1,400 prisoners. And sometimes it's years. It's not the fault of the Department of Corrections. They can't hire enough therapists, all right? So that bill says, unless you are, quote, progressing in treatment, whatever that means, to me, if you're on the wait list, you're progressing, but I'm no lawyer, okay? If you're not progressing in treatment, you can't be paroled or go to a halfway house, community corrections. So the mail and the calls and everything Cure gets, they're so frustrated, people who want to get the treatment and can't. It's not to the fault of the Department of Corrections. And some people that are on the parole board in the past, who shall remain nameless, have complained to me about it because they want to get people getting therapy out here to move along, some people. So a committee was formed months ago with the SOMB, the Sex Offender Management Board, and the DOC Sex Offender Treatment Monitoring Program. Okay, and they still have not, you can tell I'm a little irritated, that they have still not come up with what it means to progress in treatment. To me, if you're on the list, you progress. Okay, but as I said, I'm not a lawyer, and the AG's been involved in this, and he doesn't agree with me, I'm sure. So they are supposedly, after the July SOMB meeting, going to come out with whatever that committee has come up with. So it's really been so frustrating because people want to get that treatment and they can't get out to get it. Okay, so they're stuck inside. So I don't know if that answers people's questions, but that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you. There are 3 other bills that are, and Eva just put one in the chat, which is SB 21-273. And I'm going to give, so the ACLU was going to talk on these 3 bills and they are busy right now. So I'm going to give you a very high overview from what they sent me, and then I'll share their slides after this. So you'll have all of the full details, but these are the 3 bills to keep your eye on. The first being SB 21-273. It mandates summons in lieu of arrest for traffic offenses, petty offenses, municipal offenses, and nonviolent misdemeanors, meaning someone's going to get asked to come to court rather than going to jail for minor offenses. House Bill 21-1280 requires people arrested for a crime to be brought before a judge within 48 hours for bond setting. So this idea that people are waiting for an extremely long period of time, and sometimes they are sitting in jail waiting to go before a judge for some very minor offenses. This bill is trying to work on that as well. And then the third bill to keep your eye on is House Bill 21-1201. This requires jail phone providers to collect and report the costs of jail phone calls and the total amount of government kickbacks paid by the provider. This kind of goes to that, what Diane was speaking about like you're paying for tons of things when you're imprisoned, and that is often going to people who are not helping to provide additional services to folks. So those are the 3 bills to keep your eye on. Please, if you have questions about them, I cannot answer them, so please don't ask me. But if you do have them, put them in the chat and I will pop those over to Denise Mays, who is with the ACLU Colorado, who can probably send us back some answers that I can send out in my follow-up email tomorrow. One other question that we had from folks was from Shannon. She asked, is there a law that makes it illegal to fly a sign in Denver? And is it currently on the books? And if so, how do we change that?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert in this. I believe that Matt was charged criminal trespassing because he was on an on-ramp to the highway versus flying the sign. But just important to indicate the reason why he was there was because of needing money for survival. But I don't believe that flying a sign is illegal. It's more so like, where are you standing when you do it? I'm sure he was being smart as well and trying to get a high traffic area, and that didn't work out.
There is, thanks for that, Megan. There is a few studies that have been done on the criminalization of homelessness. And there's some really fascinating data that in the last 10 years, over 200% increase in crimes of homelessness in city municipalities around the country. So we're talking things that were previously no one thought about are now things that we have to constantly be addressing. And in some places, in some cities in the state of Colorado, it is illegal to fly signs. So I'm not sure if it's specifically in Denver city and county. And I will share that report with all of you so you can dig a little bit deeper, because it's like many, many pages. That does address exactly what these crimes are that are crimes of homelessness and where they've increased nationwide. So in cities like Seattle, which has had a large increase of homelessness, in cities like LA, which has had a large increase of homelessness, in cities like New York, and so on, Denver being one of them. So I think that that's really very important for us to look at and question within ourselves when we are seeing crimes of homelessness come to the table, and things that are now illegal that previously weren't. Those can include things like passing out food. That was a really big deal down on the 16th Street Mall for a long time. Charging people who were smoking, for example, we had that on the 16th Street Mall, people who were smoking cigarettes on 16th Street, that were only people who were being ticketed who happened to be experiencing homelessness. So things that otherwise, when you're housed, are not punishable offenses become punishable in lots of ways. And certainly something for us to be cognizant of and look into deeper as we question the behaviors that are going on in our community. Let me check if there's any more questions. Oh, Anne would like us to define flying a sign.
Holding up a sign on the side of the street asking for money.
And let me just see if anyone has any urgent questions, now is your time to pop it into the Q&A, and I'm just going to take a few seconds to slip through the chat to see if I see anything else that we haven't already addressed. So give me 1 second. And meanwhile, think of if you have anything burning to ask. Okay, I don't think I see anything. Oh, got one in the Q&A. There's a question about criminal trespassing tickets. I'm assuming the question is asking, why are people ticketed for criminal trespassing instead of being unhoused? Correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy. But my answer to that would be, if I'm interpreting that correctly, yep, that is what is being asked, is it's not illegal to be homeless. It's not illegal to experience homelessness. And that is probably one of the most important things for us all to be aware of. We get a lot of questions pretty often at the coalition of, someone is sleeping in my doorway of this business or is doing this thing, and none of those things are illegal. And so that's really important for us to know and be cognizant of, as well as the legalities around housed and unhoused populations. Though we know that people experiencing homelessness are most often the targets of laws that punish them for their inability to have housing. And then we have one last question from John, who's asking, what's the best way to engage to help people experiencing homelessness? Diane and Megan, what can you offer us?
Go ahead, Megan.
I would say first and foremost to treat them as a human being, just as you would anybody else. One of the biggest complaints from, or the biggest hardships folks experience is being invisible, people not acknowledging them, and it further isolates them from society, and it further kind of develops a self-belief that I don't belong here and something is wrong with me. I'm a bad person. This is why this happened. And that's some of the stuff that the program works with individuals to help kind of unravel and help them understand their worth as human beings, and they don't owe anything to us or to anything with getting housed. Housing is an inherent right. And so I would start with just engaging them as human beings, learning their story, learning what it is that they've experienced challenges with, and what can we do to help reduce some of those barriers. At the coalition, we really strive to support long-term housing solutions rather than kind of short-term things that are just band-aids. Also very important things like shelters are extremely important, but our mission here is on long-term lasting solutions. And there are several volunteer opportunities on our website, and I imagine that those change kind of frequently depending on what the current need is.
Diane, do you want to add anything?
Well, the big thing that I try to tell my members, because a lot of the members are family or friends of people incarcerated, is to get to know their state senator and their state representative. And I don't care if that person's not on the judiciary at all, you know, just get to know that person, tell your story, tell them what's going on. And I can't stress that enough. And your city council people. Okay, most of the people call me and they say, well, it's Diana DeGette. No, that's not your state representative. Okay, and then they say, Senator Bennett, no. Okay, or Senator Hickenlooper, whatever. And so I think that's important, because they need to know. And then people coming out of jail or prison, I often have them, a lot of them are struggling just to find housing and jobs. But if they can, to find out who their senator and reps are and talk to them about their experience, what was positive, what could be changed. And I just can't hammer that enough. We pay their salaries. Okay, remind them. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yes, we always invite you to advocate alongside us at the coalition on tons of issues that impact people who are experiencing homelessness, who are no longer experiencing homelessness, and those who are living in poverty and can be impacted by these issues just as much. So we do ask that if you are interested in learning who all of these folks are, Eva just posted something in the chat, which I was just going to say I'll send out, where you can find who your legislator is, so you know who they are, and sending an introductory, hey, this is who I am, and I live in this district, and this is what's important to me, does matter in the state of Colorado. So please do feel like your voice is heard. We also invite you at the coalition on our website. You can sign up for emails with us. We send out action alerts pretty often, where we invite you to write to your representatives on different bills that are coming down, and right now is a really busy part of legislative session. So what they're wrapping up. So there's lots of things happening. So please sign up so we can keep you in the know and get you to participate in that. And then last thing is, we ask you that you continue to participate in education series events. This is a constant ongoing learning experience for all of us. And so we want you to feel like this is a space where you can ask questions that you don't know the answers to, and that we want to help you figure out. The next education series event is on June 16th. It's at 5 o'clock right here on the Zoom. And we are talking about LGBTQ plus youth and homelessness, which is a very important topic on a lot of fronts, including the very low legislation that happens around this population and research that happens there. So lots of areas for us to dig deeper and to think about. And we invite you to come on June 16th to that event, which you can find on our website under the Get Involved section. And then without further ado, we'll wrap up a few minutes early tonight, and hope to see you all next month. Thank you so much. And thank you, Megan and Diane, for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.